This videotape is edited from an advanced NLP training in Boulder, Colorado, April 1989. Many of the participants had also attended previous advanced training with Richard. Richard considers this seminar to be his best ever presentation of how he works with clients. Although he presents some new submodality methods, his major emphasis is on how he puts things together and the methods that he uses to create lasting change. Since this is a carefully sequenced seminar, we recommend viewing the videotapes in order.
I had a lady one time that had lost her wedding ring, and she lost it about 15 years before she came in, and she just mentioned that, you know, because she said she was married, and I said, you have no wedding ring. Oh, here. And, thanks.
Get you untangled there, Rich.
Oh, Ted. Well, it was I just asked her because, I mean, you know, I mean, when I have clients, I ask questions, just, you know, if it could have been a political statement, but she said she lost it and that she could never bring herself to replace it because it was so special that she just thought about it being there. And she was such a good trance subject that what I did is I just regressed her back through time. I just regressed her back to when she first got married and then told her unconscious to quickly move forward and at the unconscious level until the moment the ring fell off, and then to freeze right there and to have it pop into her conscious mind. And she was sitting there and all of a sudden she went like this. And she stopped and it went down the kitchen sink. I was washing dishes and I pulled my hand up and it was gone. But she hadn't realized it at the time, you know, because when your hands are all wet or whatever, you know, she just didn't notice it. And she still lived in the same house, and she went and took the drain open in the sink, and it was down in the bottom. That many years later. So, I mean, the ability, I mean, we've done things like we age regress people back and had them read books that they had, and be able to see the page that they hadn't seen in like 20 years, and be able to read what was on it, and had a copy of it there, even though they hadn't read it in that many years. I had a copy. I had a pretty good library at the time, and they were able to actually read the words and see them on the page. That the things that the mind can do are just phenomenal. And it's not that you have to be in a deep trance to do that. It's just that if you can see, to me, where NLP grew out of my fascination with trance phenomenon more than anything else, because when I saw people doing this stuff, I started going, it's the same brain doing it. I mean, you know, the person that's, you know, reliving a nightmare, you know, some past unpleasant memory over and over again is telling me they don't have a photographic memory. You know, and it's not true that they don't have a photographic memory, they're just not using it. And the question about how you get to be able to utilize the processes of your mind. I mean, one way is to practice hypnosis a lot, and the other is to find out how your brain works. I mean, if your brain will do it, it's just a question of who's driving the bus. I mean, the fact that you can do it in a profound altered state with a hypnotist when all he's really doing is just telling you to do it. You know, that if you start telling yourself to do it, and also the thing about trance is that most of your beliefs get suspended in the altered state. Because it's not that you can't do it, it's that you believe you can't do it. So that when you start really building beliefs, and that's why with the client, with most sessions, even with this guy here, I mean, the first thing I did is began to build new beliefs. And when you start out building a foundation of beliefs, and then taking those beliefs and building work out of them, because it's not enough to just build a belief, you have to make it operational. And for somebody like him, you know, that the client that I had here this weekend is that, I mean, he was afraid of everything. You know, he'd drop a pin and, you know, he'd be like a cat with his fingernails in the ceiling. That, I mean, you know, I mean, he's a good guitar player, but he's afraid to play. You know, he's afraid if he plays better than his teachers, then they won't teach him anything anymore. Or he's afraid if he performs, he'll fuck up, you know. And of course, as long as he believes all this crap, he's not going to do anything. But if you build beliefs that he can do these things, it doesn't mean that he will. And so when you build new beliefs, then you really need to make them operational. You need to program it into the future. You need to have people try it. And one of the things that I like to do, one of the reasons I use trance work, typically at the end of most sessions, is I use it because it's a way of creating experience. It gives you the ability to go back and level out past semantic response. Because if you have somebody build a new belief, right, that they're going to be strong, and then in his case, for example, one of the things I did is I built a belief. It took, weakened the belief that, he was going to be scared, and built one that he was going to be strong, but then had him literally go through and use amplifiers to make it so that he felt stronger and stronger. Because you have to understand, his concept of what being strong is probably weak at best. Because, if you take even the strongest he's felt about something, it's not enough. It has to be something where once they build a belief, then the belief has to start to grow. So you can literally, even though beliefs might normally be this size for somebody, what you do is you have them use their feelings as a guide. Because where kinesthetics become a really valuable part of submodalities is when you use them as a gauge. Because as the picture gets bigger, as his feelings get stronger, don't make it too big, but just as big as it makes it stronger, just as close as it makes it stronger. And then, for example, he didn't have any sound in his. So then you start adding sound, and adding only sounds that increase the feeling of strength. Because as you build up this kind of strength, and then have him take the feeling, hold the feeling constant, and go back in time. Now, and to be able to go back through all the different episodes that had convinced him that he was weak, but only go through the memory as far and insofar as he can maintain the feeling of strength. And what this does is it literally blows up the semantic response in the past. See, for example, if in your mind, if you take something now, like think of a time and a place where you were really strong, see what you saw at the time, hear what you heard, and get back the feeling of strength inside you. Now, I was talking to somebody in here earlier. Some people, when they make representations, even though they see what they saw at the time, hear what they heard, only get a minimum amount of the feeling, right? Then the thing is notice where the feeling started. In other words, even if you get just a little tiny bit of it, right, notice where you felt it first. Because whatever constitutes the feeling of strength, right, is going to start some location in your body, so that there'll be like location number 1, right? Might be some feeling at the midline, and location number 2 might be something in your face and your cheeks. Location number 3 might be in your forearms. And literally go back, take the picture and wipe it out, the sounds that were there, wipe them out, then bring it back and notice the order in which you begin to build strength. Then what you do is you start cycling your consciousness through these things in order. Just like for some of you who've done that thing, drug of choice. What happens is your body knows what it's like to feel strong. If you were in the situation you felt strong, your body knows how to do it. Now the thing is being able to do it deliberately now. What you do is you start cycling through the sequence of maybe 4 or 5, and you sort by location first, and then kind second. So, maybe it's a tingling here and a drawnness on the cheek, and then a swelling of the muscles in the arm, so that you have here a location, here you have a type, and then what you do is you begin to cycle. And each time, a type, a kind of feeling. In other words, is it tingling? Is it warmth? What other submodality it is? It's just the kind it is. It's the kind of feeling it is. I mean, it could be cold, could be hot, whatever it is. And then what you do is you start to cycle through these things, and you amplify. Each time you begin the cycle, you make it stronger. Now, when you do this with somebody else, what you do is you literally start with the image. So if you now go back to the image and start cataloging these, and I'll let you guys do this with each other, but as you go through and you catalog the series of locations, then what you can do is when you want to amplify it with people, what you do is you not only can manipulate the images, make the image bigger, make the image brighter, make the sound louder, right? But you keep doing that, and then from that point, you have them then go to the first place they felt it. And if it's a warmth, you make it warmer. And then if the next place is the chest, feeling drawn, then they have it feel more drawn. And literally cycle through it 4 or 5 times to build the kinesthetics up. Then what you do is you have them notice how strong their kinesthetics feel and hold the feeling constant, and then drop down an image of where they want to be strong but aren't. See, for example, you know, if you were afraid of dogs, right? Because dogs know when you're afraid, so they pick on you. They really do, especially mine. Mine used to think that was just the hobby of the century. I mean, you know, because people, when they drive up to my driveway, had big signs on there that said, "Beware of guard dogs," you know. And, you know, if somebody looked at the signs, I could tell by the way they looked at the signs that they didn't have good rapport with dogs, right? And, you know, most of the time I'd have to lock my dog up because he'd go, "Somebody's afraid of dogs. I can smell that one right now." And so he'd like do things like he'd sit in front of him and he'd stare at him like that. And if they start to move, he'd pull his lips up, right? And I knew he was laughing because I knew my dog really well, right? But it was like, how much could I scare this person? And, you know, and I mean, because, I mean, it's almost instinctual in animals to pick on people that are afraid of them. So what you do with somebody to teach them how to, with this kind of fear, because it's not like a phobia. Fears don't work the same way as phobias. And a lot of people try to use the phobia cure to get rid of fears. And it helps, but it doesn't do it. Because what you're really doing in the situation, phobias are where it's blown out of proportion, and you have to reduce it down before you can do anything with it. But when it's a fear, even though, you know, it's very scary, it builds slowly. It doesn't go threshold break. You know, phobias go boom and they're there. Fears work up slowly. A lot of people don't have a phobia of flying, they have a fear of flying. And they start scaring themselves all the way to the airport, right? You know. Yeah, you know, they drive down the road and they make pictures of the plane crashing and they review all the past news, getting sucked out of the planes and stuff. They feel themselves being sucked out of the plane, falling down, you know. It's a good way to make yourself feel relaxed as you're headed for a plane, you know. And the thing is what you need to do with those kind of contexts is that you build up the strength, right? Have them hold the feeling constant. And then from the center of the image of the belief, literally the belief they're going to be strong, because I take the strength and then literally switch it to a belief that they're going to be strong with dogs. And then what I do is I open up out of the center of that episodes, 3 or 4 episodes where they did badly in the past, the scariest ones they can find, but have them only open the picture up at the rate that they can maintain the feeling of strength, so that by the time the picture is all the way open, they have the strong feeling. Now, in this way, you recondition them so that when they're in future situations, rather than building the fear, there's still the same things will be there, but it's going to bring out the strong feelings. And this is one of the powers of using. Now, the 2 strongest parts of this are maintaining the kinesthetics and building in auditories. Now, for example, when I want people to feel strong, I have them make noises inside of their head that make them feel strong, like growling. You know, stuff that accesses the old brain. Because old brain functions, things like growling and snarling, you know, and those kinds of sounds are the kinds of things that are going to access that old thalamic intervention. I mean, especially when I work with people that have sexual problems, because only human beings can screw up something that animals can do, you know. So as soon as you have thalamic intervention, stupidity becomes a possibility. And so, I mean, to short-circuit that, one of the things is when they think about sex, instead of making pictures of themselves failing, I want to override that with internal sounds, animal noises, you know, things that access, you know, snorts and snarls, you know, screams, moans, that sort of thing. The sort of thing that goes directly to your neurology. Because there's a lot of sounds that humans make that are direct neurological things. They're not like voluntary sounds. So, I mean, to me, I have like a list in my head of involuntary noises. And the fact it doesn't mean you can't make them voluntarily, but even when you make them voluntarily, if they're done with wanton abandonment, it accesses the neurology the same way, so to speak, gets the right juices flowing, you know. And when you're dealing with things like fight-flight reactions, you want the fight reaction, not the flight reaction. You don't want, "Ah!" That is not the noise that you want, right? You want the one that goes, "Ah!" You want that kind of a sound. And even if it's just internal in their head, the fact that it's connected is going to build more strength. Does that make sense? Good. Well, this is a good place to start, wouldn't you think?
visually, is it wired in the same way sounds are? It seems to
No.
me it's a totally different system.
Yeah. So, well, the visual system has the property of simultaneity. That means you can hold a representation there. See, whereas sound is sequential in nature. It goes by, and it just operates completely differently. It's also much more unconscious. Yeah?
So out of the image of the new belief of being strong, while holding constant the kinesthetics and the auditory, that comes an image of something that
Yeah,
is...
I mean, literally what I do is I have them pick a thing. So, for example, if they, were walking down the street, and a dog looked at them and went, "Afraid of dogs, huh?" and harassed them, and they did things like ran away, and were embarrassed because it was the first date they had with somebody. So it was a first date, and the dog runs up and you leave your date and run away. Mr. Macho, right? And then you think about it for 25 years and feel like a heel, right? This is the kind of thing that what I'm going to do is, once I have the strong belief, I have them locked onto the feelings, and I'll anchor it as well, just to make sure, so that if I notice on their face that they're beginning to slip, I'll give them a little help. But tell them, and I mean the instructions, just like you tell people, I'm going to lift up your hand and I want you to let it go down only as fast as you make these changes. Only this time, instead of lifting their hands, you're saying, you take these feelings of strength, and in the center, just first as a pin dot, begin to open up an image of the time the dog chased you away from your first date, but open it up only as fast as you can maintain the strong feelings, so that the picture gets bigger and bigger, till finally it will entirely cover the other image, but only at the rate and the speed that you are able to maintain the strong feelings. So that what you're doing is literally, they'll open it up, right, and, and their feelings might go away, and they lock onto the strong feelings and keep inching it open like this while holding their feelings constant. And it builds in a new set of neural networks, basically.
Are those the feelings that they're holding constant going through the cycle?
Well, you run through the cycle to get the feelings strong in the first place, because you can't depend upon what they can derive from an image, because whenever you see what you saw at a time, you're going to have the same feelings, but they won't be as strong as if you were really there. So you want to get as close to that as you can. This is where you want to use the kinesthetic amplifiers, and with some people, they're so removed from their body, you have to list for them what these might be. You go pressure, temperature, moisture, just expansion, of your chest, whether your muscles feel tight or loose. I mean, some people don't spend a lot of time paying attention to their kinesthetics. And so therefore, they're less able to manipulate them. See, for example, like we were talking, you can move pictures all over the place, but they don't affect you like sound does. And one of the reasons is you spend so much time making pictures. That's one of the reasons they don't have as much impact. But now, if you can learn to move your feelings around that way, in essence, that's what this technique is a beginning to learn to have this feeling when these things are there, right? So when the dog turns around, you have control over the fight-flight reaction. The dog bites you, you might go into a flight reaction, but if you have those feelings, you'll generate that odor, and the dog will go, not him, him. Chase the girl away instead of you. I used to breed guard dogs and train them, and I know a lot about them. And it's like most of you, those of you who have dogs, do you realize how persnickety they are about their toes, right? Well, think about clipping their toenails, right? You pull out the toenail clipper, hold onto their foot, and before you clip, they're screaming. Now, don't tell me dogs don't have imagination, right? They don't make constructed images. You go like this, you pull it forward, and they go, ah! They know what's going to happen. They have a memory. They access foretuples. And most dogs have a phobia of their toes being touched. This kind of a technique allows you to begin because, see, now, you really want to, when you do this, as you cycle through, keep adding sounds that match it. Now, this isn't just for strength. It could be any feeling that you need to learn to magnify in any context. For our purposes here, start with strength because we talked about it. Now, what I want you to do is get a partner. And remember, when you access the strong feelings, okay, that's step number one. Then take the strong feelings and ask them where they want to have more strength, where they want to have more chutzpah, and then have them do the belief change. You guys remember from using your brain for change, the belief change? You start with, you get a weak belief and a strong belief. right? So you take their belief that they are not strong in this situation. When you ask somebody, where do you want to be where do you need to be strong, right? As soon as they answer, you know they're not strong there, right? And they believe they're not strong there. So you have them start that out in a belief situation and then turn it into a wishy-washy belief. Then put in and build a belief that they're going to be strong from there. Then amplify that to get stronger kinesthetics. Then cycle through the kinesthetics to make it even stronger, and then add strong sounds to it so that you really magnify the kinesthetics, so that they really get a full body representation of strength, and then go back and put the content in and open it up. Okay, do you understand the sequence?
Once more.
You start out by, okay, you're going to do a belief change. So you start out by asking them where they want more strength, okay, which means that they don't have it there. Then you pick a time where they had strength, okay. First you take the feeling of strength, right, and then you have them take that feeling, and then you start by taking the belief that they're not strong there, turn it into a wishy-washy one, then take the feeling of strength, literally flip over the new image, and the feeling of strength that they're going to be strong there. Then you amplify all the submodalities to build more and more strength, having them notice and report to you the sequence in which strength occurs, by location and by kind. Then you cycle through the location and the kind, amplifying like hypnosis, like, you know, and it's more of this, and this will amplify. Literally, this is a trance right here, deep trance, as deep as you can get it, to amplify the feelings of strength. And you add in strong sounds, sounds which are congruent with where they want to be. Okay, once you've done that, then you take in the belief position, right, and you open up from the center of it whatever the actual object was, and you pick a memory where they fucked up from the past, and you open it up in the center. So if they were chased by a dog, you take the time they were chased by the dog, have them open it up, but only at the rate and speed they can maintain these feelings, and have an anchor for it so that you're sure. End result, they'll be looking at the worst experience they had, but they'll be feeling strong now, which tells them they're going to be strong in the future. Means they won. Okay, grab yourself a partner. Let's build some chutzpah in. So, okay, how'd you guys do? Love it. Now, I'd like to point out a couple of things to you about this. One is I like to remind people, in lieu of the conversations we were having about people's ability to get rigid about whether it's a bunny or not. You guys remember that from yesterday? You don't just do this with strength. You can do this with all kinds of things. There are many things where you really want to build the belief, because there are feelings that propel us. And where this is most useful is the kinds of things where people need feelings to propel them in behavior, where the feelings lead to activity, you know, where strength leads to standing up to yourself. Things like things about motivation, because things that have to do with the kinds of feelings that are followed by behavior. A lot of times people try to build behaviors that create feelings, and there are a lot of things for which that's useful. But things like, especially things that have to do with learning, you know, the kind of motivation, the desire to learn, desire to try new things, See, for example, a lot of people that I've worked with through the years were afraid to travel. And the thing is because they'd be stuck in new situations where they wouldn't know how to act. So what they needed was an overall feeling to deal with the unknown. Because, see, if you think about unknown phenomenon, like a lot of people, I was interviewed yesterday by this person from Anchor Point, and one of the things is he kept asking questions like, where are you going to be in 5 years, right? And, you know, and I tried to point out to him, if I knew that, then I probably wouldn't go there. That, to me, you know, that the motivating factor is going into the unknown. It's that I like doing it. It's not that, you know, I have some, you know, emotional stake with saving humanity. I like it. I like life on the edge. But I like life dealing with unknown things, things that are not understood, things that are a mystery. I mean, to me, going into an unknown situation is exhilarating. Now, the people who have fear of traveling don't have the sense that mystery is exhilarating. that not knowing what to do or how to do something is what makes it exciting. That figuring it out is an adventure, it's a challenge. That going into a culture where nobody speaks the language, and see, like when the first time that I took a vacation anywhere without working or something that, you know, the government didn't pay for and sort of require you to do, was I went to Tahiti, but I didn't like go to a resort. I went to the middle of nowhere. See, being able to create a set of feelings and a new belief that when people believe the unknown is scary, it's dangerous, it's to be, that feeling awkward or unfamiliar isn't exhilarating to them. That what happens is that belief itself limits their ability to go into unknown turf. Now, the same kind of formula that we just used is the kind of thing that I use to get people to disengage, because if you think about how much people opt for familiar behaviors, if it's more familiar to fight with your spouse because you don't have experiences in flirting. I mean, the flirting class, when I started teaching it, the first time was for couples only. And I mean, I couldn't believe the response of people. They went, what do couples need to flirt for? Right? And I mean, you know, when the people did the telemarketing on the course, people would go, well, why? You know, we're already married. What do we need to flirt for? And of course, I had my telemarketers adequately prepared to go, that's exactly, the fact that you would ask that question is the answer, because you know, flirting gets certain kinds of responses easily and quickly and more enjoyably. Would you rather spend your time with your wife fighting or flirting? Think about it. You know, and they go, well, we fight most of the time, you know, and it's like, well, we know how to do it, so it's probably the easiest thing to do. I mean, at least we got it down cold. And I go, well, yes, but would you rather have it down hot? Because, see, if you think of the degree to which people opt for the familiar, being able to install, because especially those of you who work with people on an ongoing basis, either they're employees of yours, people you do long-term training with, or clients that you see, because I know I don't see clients more than once, but, you know, unless they're very wealthy. But when I do have the wealthy ones and see them more than once, I start wanting to build more things that have to do with dissembling this propensity to move towards the familiar and start looking towards the future as an adventure. So that as they get into unknown situations, rather than reverting to old behaviors, they stop and pause and start to learn new analog ways of moving. Because like in the flirting class, as we start to give people the basis on, you know, how to flirt, you know, like do things like come outside of yourself. I mean, this is step number one, is get out of your head. Because we discovered it's the biggest lack that keeps people from being able to flirt is being able to get them to talk to the other person instead of talk to themselves. I mean, most of the time people go inside and they talk to themselves. But with couples, what we found is that rather than stopping and doing unusual things, that their tendency is to do familiar things, that they keep building more and more rituals as time goes on. And it becomes so ritualized, it could be put on videotape, and they wouldn't need to live their lives. Now, again, I'm using absurdity, but of course that's the kind of thing that I use with couples, that if they're going to do the same thing every day, they should just tape it, put it in the house, turn it on, and kill themselves. You know, wouldn't that be easier? And they go, well, that's stupid. And I go, well, I'm not the one doing it. That always gets them. I love those double hooks, right? See, it's such a beautiful setup, because when they tell you it's stupid, and then you tell them you're the one living that way, then I can begin to build a sense of adventure. Because, see, with somebody who would ask me, and again, somebody asked me about, when you were asking me about identifying metaprograms, this person who's a reporter asking me the questions, the presupposition is that you pick places and go to them. And that, you know, it's like, well, you know, well, where are you taking NLP? And it's not like that. I'm along for the ride. You see, I want to go where I haven't gone before. And I don't know where that is. That's something that arises out of a fluid process of paying attention to what goes on, to listening to new and better normalizations. Because normalizations are, of course, where you find all kinds of great things. I mean, that I know that Steve and you both told me that what was the one you had unpacked? Forgiveness?
No, that's the one he has.
Oh, yeah.
Shame, guilt,
Shame,
grief.
Shame, guilt, grief, that when people use these words, they're so disconnected. Words, especially the words for which there isn't a verb, like shame, there isn't, it just it doesn't have a verb translation. Love, trust, phrases that people use, like one of the things I remember that when Chris and I were talking, and Chris said that she was talking to somebody, and this guy said that he had blown a problem out of proportion. And we both went, ooh, because we just heard it and we thought, well, how do you do that? Because if you can blow it out of proportion, you can put it in proportion. And to me, it wasn't that I knew a week before that that's what I was going to look at. It's whatever strikes you. It's going in, and that instead of trying to take things and make them familiar, that through the years as I've taught NLP, there's been this major mental illness that cracks me up, is that people are always trying to translate NLP into TA, translate it into Gestalt, translate it into, Sullivan. People are always raising their hand going, isn't this the same as Sullivan's concept of the ego-analytic self? And I go, no. And they go, well, how does it relate? And I go, I don't care. But you see, when people are sorting for sameness, okay, which is the principle you hear when people are looking for familiarity, they're sorting for sameness. Or they're sorting for difference, and they have a moving away from strategy, which are the two different cases. Now, when people are sorting for familiarity, that doesn't mean that they can't have the same sense of adventure, but if the familiar thing they're looking for is new, see, it's not that they have to sort back into their old behavior. It's the only sameness they've learned to sort for. So as you begin to build for people like this, a grid that says, this is the sameness to sort for. And for me, one of the things that I do is to build in something that marvelous thing about the unknown, the marvelous thing about going into context and a sense of adventure where something is new, and to build into that exhilaration. Now, to me, this is where you begin to build new sets of submodalities, not existing ones, but ones where now what we do is we take kinesthetic leads. Now, the process you just learned here is a process, let's see, I'm in the right time zone here, I got time for this, is if you take now and sort in the same system like this, but instead what we're going to do is we're going to do something a little trickier. If we take now, let's take 3 4 tuples. Okay. The 4 tuples themselves, for example, will take just exhilaration, I mean, the kind that makes you zing, where something really works. The kind of thing where you do something and you don't even know how you did it. If any of you ever gone to a carnival and thrown a ball and it just went right in the perfect place and you won, that thing where just the moment before it rolls in, you don't know how you did it, but it worked. That sometimes when you're gambling or playing cards or when you're working with clients, sometimes just something pops out and you don't know quite how it happens. Now, that kind of exhilaration, how's that spelled? Is that with an E? I would spell everything with an I nowadays. Got hooked on that. I don't even know. What? H? All right, well, you're all yelling at the same time. One of you do it.
H-I-L.
Chad.
The only one is.
That's enough. You know what I mean. I'm not into whole words. They taught me syllables, so I figure all you need is the first part. I just don't like to use separated by morphemes. I like to stop just partially through the word. I'm into sentence fragments, too.
It's a great new word to play with. Exilla the Hun.
Exilla the Hun. Self-referential index. Did you hear that? Sorts by self. See, he asked about metaprograms, about hearing those things. And the thing is you just file that stuff away. I mean, as it comes by, when people are using metaprograms, there's no way out of it. And it's going to give you information. And the information always tells you the best way to install new behaviors. But we're going to do something a little unnatural because what we're after is something new here. Now, if you take something like exhilaration, then there's also the thing where you notice something new. When you learn a pattern in a workshop, where the kind of thing where you actually hear what somebody says for a change, and when you hear something a client says and something inside you goes, ooh, like when Chris and I heard this guy say it's blown out of proportion. It's like the first time I noticed a thing. I noticed this. One of the things one of these TV evangelists did. He had a whole group of people there, and he said, "Now, you can worship God." And I went, ooh. So there's that one. The one that just strikes you because there's something it's something that's been going on all along, but you never noticed it before. That, I mean, it's like accessing cues. When we used to go around and do intros, 20 years ago, we'd tell people, what we do is we just have them sit down and we'd have them ask questions. And we'd have them do all visual questions and all auditory and then all visual constructs and tell them to watch which way the eyes moved. And we'd draw the eye chart. And people were so blown out that they could ask a question and get people's eyes to move in the same direction. That's how developed the field of psychology was. You could have just said, look up and to the right 5 times. People would do that and they could have got the same result. But it never dawned on them. It was like, wow, I can ask people to make a giraffe with a rhinoceros's head and their eyes move. That's how much impact therapists were used to having. They were stunned by that. I mean, really, We teach them anchoring. That was, we could change somebody's life. That's nothing. But we can make their eyes move. Ooh. Now, if you take this 4-tuple, the 4-tuple of Wu, and then one where, because everybody has had a sense of adventure, if only vicariously through the movies, And the other place is what I want you to do now is we're going to do something a little trickier. I want you to find an example 4-tuple of each of these, some kind of adventure. And what I want you to do is the following. For each of these, I want you to have the person pick a theme, musical theme, right? Maybe down here we'll go Raiders of the Lost Ark, exhilaration,
Radar love.
What?
Radar love.
I never heard it.
Yeah.
All right, well, so radar love.
If you ever heard it. Yeah, you know.
See, me, I think of Magic Carpet Ride. I mean, it's you don't know. Different era, same drugs. Now, the same thing is that thing that's like, ooh, find some kind of music that goes with that, the same kinds of experiences. Now, the way you do this is that what I want you to do is have them get the feelings, anchor each of these feelings, so you'll end up with 3 anchors. Oops, count in order, Richard. Okay, so make yourself 3 anchors. Then go through and make music for each one, right? Now, once you have an anchor and the music for each one, then I want you to turn the music up, right? And as you turn the music up, louder and louder, have them notice the cycle and the kind of change in the feelings, okay? Then what I want you to do is, as you get your list here, then what I want you to do is we're going to do something real tricky. What you're going to do is you're going to do each of the first 3 feelings, each of the second 3 feelings. So you're going to do, this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that you're going to do the first part of the first one, the second part of the second, the first part of the second one, the first part of the third one. Then you do the second part of the first. So what you're going to be doing is wrapping these things together. Now, as they wrap together and cycle...
Tied to what?
Don't ask questions, listen. You have to listen in order to hear. Okay, this is how you get lost each time. So take this as a lesson. You have 3 different feelings. Each one of them, as you do them one at a time, you turn the music up, notice that the feelings get more intense, but you find out the order in the locations in which they do. Once you have 3 lists, then what we're going to do is we're going to integrate them. You do the first feeling from each of the lists. Then if the location for exhilaration is forehead, for ooh is the shoulder, and for adventure is the stomach, then you do this, this, and this. Then you do the second one for each of them. And you cycle through these, and you keep doing it faster and faster and faster till you build a new feeling. Okay? Once you've built the new feeling, what I want you to do is, because you're now going to have a new set of submodalities, because what you do is have them take that feeling and then think about looking for new things in this field. Looking at normalizations, new behaviors. Have them think about creating things in this field and build a belief that they can do it that matches this feeling. And then give them the post-hypnotic suggestion in as deep a trance as you can find that every time they have something unusual happen, this feeling will come up, and then they'll stop and start looking for other places they've had the feeling and find out how they fit together and do something new. That way when I come back next time, you guys can teach me. It's my turn. Is this clear to you? This is how you begin to build and create some really dramatic new representations using kinesthetic and auditory leads. Now, I'll tell you one thing which will help you is that as you go through this, when you find the music, right, when you want to amplify it, right, you're going to have them report on the order, but induce a mild trance, and then use your hand to expand the music so that it becomes more fuller. So it's not some little tinny little shit in the background, okay? Some people haven't used that internal stereo. I mean, mine's so good, I can't listen to a stereo now. I listen to music in stereos and I go, you know, I just listen to it once, turn it off, and then play it in my head, and it's much more dramatic because I had other instruments in, turn it loud. So you can, like, if, you know, it's just kind of a tinny little thing, have them add, you know, instead of, you know, a shitty little piano, make it a grand. You know, put in a horn section, put in more singers, you know, make it more dramatic, make it louder, get Marshall amps, you know, crank the volume up, you know, use drug of choice before you start. Anything you can to just fill it out as a total representation. Now, once you go through, then you take the 3 feelings and what you're going to do is first unwrap them by location, and then you're going to wrap all 3 of them together and build a new feeling. This is something you cannot do by collapsing anchors, because the reason you go through them sequentially is as you speed this up, you're going to create a new feeling rather than have 2 that cancel each other out. And it's much more dramatic than a chain. Trust me, you'll love this. Then you can take it and apply it to sex. And if you use I've been working on the railroad, you're fired. Okay, grab yourself a partner and go for it. One of the things that the last exercise that we did is about is not only you building new feelings, but you're finding ways to make them stronger. And the thing is that when you really want to intensify feelings in the outside world, one of the things that you want to be able to do is to take the systems that are more quote-unquote outside of consciousness and to be able to take them and to amplify them. You know, amplifying things like lust is a double-edged sword because, you know, if you want somebody to really be attracted to women, you also have to make sure that they have the courage to do something about it, which in many cases is not genetically installed, but it's also easy to come by. But again, you're going to be building configurations. Hi. Look at camera. Smile. Look at that color change you get. Isn't that nice? Look at camera and feel good. That's right. Now, I tell you what, you don't need your glasses.
No.
You can see without them if you close your eyes now. That's right. And as you do so, take a deep breath and relax. And what I want you to do as you relax is very, very slowly take another deep breath, and go back in time to a place where there was a past pleasant memory, something that was lustful in nature, something you can enjoy. Smell the smells, hear the sounds, and turn the volume up and up. And as it gets louder, what I'd suggest to you is that you continue to relax even more. And I'm going to reach over, and I'm going to lift up your left arm. I'm not going to tell you to put it down any faster than you begin to drift deeply and deeply into a trance. Because as you sit here, what you're doing now is beginning the process of learning. And what I want you and your unconscious to learn about is the process of going back and taking component pieces of your life to build a new future. Because all the experiences that you've had throughout the time you've been alive constitute the building blocks of your future. So very slowly, as that hand begins to slowly go down, I want you to find a time and a place where you have courage, the kind of courage to do things that perhaps others don't do. It might be with cameras, it might be with electronic equipment, but it's that matter-of-fact courage that says, just do it, just go for it. And to notice how it feels, and to take that feeling, and with each movement of this hand going down, I want the feeling to become stronger and stronger. And as it continues down and that feeling spreads and gets stronger, in the center of it, I want you to begin another feeling by seeing a time and a place where you looked and saw someone and felt lust in more than your heart. That's right. And as the hand comes down, I want that lust to begin to grow even stronger and spread and fill within the courage. Because lust without wanton courage is no fun. And fun is what it's all about. And feel those feelings spread and the warmth get hotter. And hear the volume go up of the sounds that are appropriate. And begin to hear the kinds of things you would say and do as if they're coming out of your own mouth, moving from this point forward. That's right. And as that hand goes down, multiply those feelings times 2, times 3, 4, the purpose of learning. Now, knowing what you know and what you've heard in the course of this and other workshops, I know both your unconscious and conscious mind know a lot of things about how timelines work. And as that feeling continues to multiply and grow and spread and become much more intense, I want you to float up over your timeline and drop down right in your present, facing the future and with your back to the past. And then very slowly, I want you to begin to float backwards in time, floating on the wings of time and change, feeling air move around you. As the future moves off into the distance, you'll watch your past circle around you and feel yourself floating back, honestly, unconsciously, getting younger and younger and smaller, way back in time, taking these feelings with you and having them get stronger in your past. Find an appropriate place to stop and then begin to move forward and hear yourself growl as you find a new courage inside you. Feel your nostrils flare as you realized that all the opportunities that you used to miss in the past are now going to be within your grasp as you lunge forward and move towards the future with a wanton and growing sense of passion, lust, and courage, and a newfound judgment that you can take these things and make them spread from your body to others. That's right. And when you reach the present, I want you to explode into the future by multiplying these feelings times 10, 20, 40. That's right. Such that as you look forward, there's no way you would want to act differently other than in your own best interest. Because in order to enjoy life, lust is an integral part of it. And you will find yourself, surprisingly, being able to spread this easily from yourself to others. The old adage, ask and ye shall receive, as long as you know how to anchor, applies here. That's right. And see yourself doing things that you would have never thought you would have done, and realize you're going to do them over and over and over. That's right. And when your hand is all the way back down on your knee, I want your unconscious to have taken total responsibility for amplifying this feeling more each day and making sure you act on it more each opportunity. That's right. And when your hand is touching your knee, I know that you're ready to seduce life. That's right. Take all the time you need to move in the right direction. That's right. And you know where your knee is. That's not your knee. There you go. Now, very slowly, I want you internally to begin to count for yourself, 20 to 1. And with each count, you wake out of the trance one bit, but this will become one count stronger because you want to take the passion with you. Begin to become someone who counts internally. With each count, you'll arouse from the trance, but your feelings will get one notch stronger. Such that when you reach 1, your eyes will open, but your mind will race. You know, this again is an example of the subtle sorts of changes that I like to induce. Hi! Anything come to mind?
Yeah, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Well, now go back to your camera.
Can I have the rest of the day off?
No, it just will build up more and more so that afterwards you look out at the world and suddenly it'll appear like a smorgasbord that's for free. All right. As the visuals and auditories of the world discover the power of kinesthetics, multiple system life. Oh, and I have a tool I'll give you later. When I assign the first exercise, come over, I'll give you a little tool that you can use for this. It's a secret, though. Now, the other piece I wanted to add to the piece of work that you did is the same kind of thing, because to me, and I want to do it a little bit differently. He sat here and filmed 4 workshops. I figured it was about time he had a turn. But I'm going to ask you to try something a little bit different. This time, what I'd like you to do is to go back and access the new feeling that you built. Remember in the last exercise before lunch? You like the feeling that you built? Yeah. Well, you can also throw a little lust in that one if you want to, just as long as you don't do it with your clients, right? I've discovered a good rule. Don't date anyone who knows NLP, especially if they know more than you. You'll find yourself doing dishes and windows. Just ask Steve. Well, there's ambiguity is a wonderful thing. It's lack of commitment. Now, the thing that I want you to do this time is I want you to induce an altered state, and I want you to really magnify feelings. And one of the things that I do is that the body has its own language. And one of the things I learned from Feldenkrais was that, for those of you, remember, and for those of you who've been before, we did a little of Feldenkrais things about how how that just literally, if you put your hands, like people who have real tight shoulder muscles, if you put your hands on top of their muscles and tighten them up, and then relax your hands just on the surface of the skin without pressing, it tells the muscles, you're tight, relax. The skin has a certain knowledge or wisdom because it knows, like, for example, when you stretch the surface and let go of the skin above a muscle, it's the same thing as full arm extension, so it helps you to relax. It's like people say exercise helps you to relax. Well, with some people it does and some it doesn't. But if you literally extend your arm to the full stretch so the skin is fully stretched and pull like this, when you relax, the muscle here will be much more relaxed because it sends all the signals to the brain, you're done. Now, for the purposes here, one of the things you can add to anchoring is knowledge of how to do this. Because one of the things is when I start out anchoring with a small anchor, when I say to multiply it, I use my fingers and create a greater surface area. And then when I multiply it again, I make my hand bigger and apply more pressure because we want more intensity, right? So that there's more pressure behind the feeling and more temperature. Now, when you put your hand flat, of course, in temperature like this room, it's going to get warmer. And there's an old trick that I do. I rub my hands together before I do it. And you're going to feel it warmer. So that you begin to actually take direct sensations, tell the body, heat this up. And it knows how to take it, and you're going to take this and spread it. Now, when you use direct commands with kinesthetics, do them at the simultaneous moment you touch. When you go, double it, move your hand bigger, right? And then when you go and make it more intense, press harder. The body knows how to take those suggestions from two channels and how to work with them. Wouldn't you say? Yes, I would. Has been. Will you testify, son? Now, the thing that I want you to do is I want you to just now really amp those feelings out through induction, the same way I did with him. Then what I want you to do is to have the person, instead of just sitting there like I did and backing through the timeline, have them physically stand up in their timeline. Take their timeline, stand up in it, turn backwards in their timeline, and walk into the past. Make sure there are no chairs behind them to trip over. Back up into the past, see events fold around them, and tell them to go back honestly. Remember semantically loaded words. Honestly, completely, thoroughly. All your LY words are the ones that modify so that you can get younger and younger and hold this feeling. Take it into your past. Now, this is a way where you take them back to an appropriate time and then begin to rush forward and see how things would have been different, right? So that you can launch them into the future with difference, CE, that the suffixes and all of the morphemes of language become incredibly important at this time. You want the CE stuff as you go into the future. Difference, excellence, you know, that it's not choices, but choosing, ING words into the future, so that as you propel them up through the timeline, have them go through any unsatisfactory experience and meld it into the new feeling, so that the feeling goes through, much like the decision destroyer does visually, this does it kinesthetically, so that anything that would have gotten in their way is already different now. So as you launch into the future, you launch knowing that you have the solid foundation of having melted the past blocks so that you can move into the future with a new and challenging sense of wanton anticipation. Use your tonality, your voice volume, your voice intensity, all of those things to keep the amplified feelings there. Keep a good kinesthetic anchor. Anchor at the midline. Anchor either here or the upper chest. Either one, because they're good places, because there's not too many neurons. If they sense the place you touch, like if you do it on the hand, everything's too close together, and it becomes much too precise. So use areas. You can do it on the back, but it doesn't work as well for this particular type of stuff. Down here, this area, it's perfect. Chakra points are always nice. I don't know why, but they work. You know, they spent 40,000 years finding them. We might as well use them. And launch them into the future so that they feel themselves doing new things, and then let their unconscious, let their hand go down at the rate and speed that they see and hear themselves and their voice coming out of their mouth, not from somewhere else. And now add the music, have them find new music that fits with the new feeling. Either create it themselves or find some piece that gives them that feeling, so that anytime they're in that situation, they'll begin to hear that tune and have their unconscious take responsibility for playing that music, such that when their hand touches their knee, the music will explode in their head and they'll have the feeling wantonly intensely. And make sure when you count them out that the feeling gets stronger towards the conscious state and the trance goes away. Because remember, we want the new learnings to go into the conscious state. So we always want the more conscious you are, the stronger the feeling is, not the weaker. Do you understand that? Yes, yes? Okay. Come out of trance. Just for a minute. 4, 3, 2, 1. It's just talking to unconscious. No need for you to listen. Now, then what they end up with is a strong feeling in the conscious state and a powerful post-hypnotic suggestion that the new music will take the new feeling into the future, so that, and then have them again see the context where this would be useful and have them hear the music immediately. Do 4 or 5 of them. It's like an auditory visual switch. Have them bring the context in and have it be life-size, panoramic. And each time they bring in like 4 or 5 contexts where they want to use this feeling, have them pop up a picture which is life-size, panoramic, and turn the music on. Do about 5 of those and you'll be ready to go. Now, wow, 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 wow. Do it. How did this go? Do you like this kind of stuff? How do you like moving back through time? Better. Well, if you take good feelings back with you, yes. I mean, you know, if you take your horrible feelings and use them for transderivational search. I noticed I was watching somebody do a piece of work during the beginning of the practitioner course. We had one of these expert master practitioners from the Professional School of Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which I love. That's one of the certification groups, refers to themselves as the Professional NLP group, which makes us unprofessional, which is, in my opinion, means we're probably better at it. But they were doing a piece of work with somebody in the lobby, and they didn't see me there, and I walked up, and that person said, now, you know that bad feeling you get? And the person stopped, and they anchored it, and they go, now, make it worse, make it feel worse, even worse, worse. Now go back through time, further and further, till you find what hideous event started it. And I thought, this is interesting. And so I decided, I walked up and I told them I could show them a thing about moving anchors, right? And so the guy said to me, he goes, why would you want to move an anchor? I said, let me show you. So I looked at the guy and I said, you know the hideous feeling that you have, the really horrible thing like that? And the guy says, yeah. And I said, watch it all come up into my hand and go into you. Ha! See, now I can anchor you and you'll feel bad. And every time you try to work with anyone in this way, this is how you'll feel. Because we try to make our clients feel better. It's one of my favorite patterns. There's a thing called punctuation ambiguity in patterns 1. And this is where you can take words and you can overlap and make a sentence, because a sentence can end, but if you throw a few more words on it, it changes the meaning. And I do this a lot with clients. And, you know, where they go, I'm really stuck, you know, with not being able to stand up for myself. And I go, weren't you? Because just by the timing of adding it on their sentence, it goes boom in the unconscious and just throws it in. And, you know, people go, well, you know, I'm never going to be able to use this stuff to change my life as much as I will today. I'll throw in. And I mean, just when you do it, it just goes zzz, and it hooks into the language machine. And that way they cannot TD back through their own conversations. They cannot, you know, they can't use pronouns and its and ases to continue to talk about it, because you break up the language machine. Because transderivational search is the process by which you connect together multiple sentences. So if you change the meaning of their sentence, they can't go back into the conversation, and it builds what's called a bracket inside of consciousness. Just fucks it up for them. And it's one of the advantages of like learning about language, is because language is the most unconscious thing that people do. And being able to influence it, to throw in things like this, and people go, well, I really want to change my life within the next 5 minutes, right? Because then they go, because it sinks into the meaning machine, the semantic machine, and even, as long as you use their intonation pattern and their tonality structure, and it's one of those dynamite things you can throw in. The other thing I wanted you to try is we did a little experiment. Because we're doing we're using other systems, getting away from the old visual system being the main lead system. There's another kinesthetic thing like the one we just did. Did you like the walking backwards through the time tunnel? Well, there is, in case you guys didn't realize it, timelines is something we made up. It's not something we found. The fact that people sort pictures this way, when you make a line through it, people don't come with a timeline. You make them one. And the pictures may be ordered that way, but they hadn't drawn a line through them yet. Now, the one thing that we tried, what you just did is you, in essence, put your timeline out on the floor. If you think about it, and some of you might have had it waist high or whatever, but in essence, what you did is you put your timeline out in front of you. And if you think about things like spatial anchoring works. It worked for those of you who remember Gestalt therapy. When you had people switch back and forth between the chairs, they worked. They actually switch over to the chair. They'd be a wimp in this one. They'd go over. They'd be an asshole in this one. And you'd say to them, switch. They'd move over and they'd change. Damnedest things. I always wondered what would happen if you burned one of the chairs up. Go, oh, you're stuck like that now. You're going to be a wimp for life. Or an asshole, one or the other. Weird set of choices, though, I always thought I should add more furniture. I always like to have, put 2 chairs and a bed. And tell them, which do you want? Just a thought. Now, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to try something just for the hell of it. What I'd like you to do is to try having the person stop and think about if this point on the floor, right here is your conscious state, right? How far can you go deeply into trance so far? And have them literally visualize themselves consciously, right? And look at the progressions of the steps to the deepest trance that they've been in so far. Then have them literally walk into it so that they are standing facing consciousness, and then have them walk backwards all the way into a deep trance as they go backwards, one step at a time, going and filling each of the bracketed descriptions, and then don't have them go all the way backwards, though. Have them go a little bit down, then back to consciousness, then a little bit further, up, then a little bit further back, so that they find out, and then bring them all the way back to their furthest point, and then bring them not all the way up, but part of the way up, and then bring them another 10 or 15 feet backwards, and find out what happens. You might want a chair at the end of that. Or a bed. Or after the workshop, Jack. This is what once we have the requisite variety in here, then you go out on the outside world. Now, once you've done that, though, I want you to do something else. I want you to bring them up, and I want you to walk them up to their conscious state, and then walk them further that way. And find out how the world changes. Anchor it, and tell them they can go into this state anytime they need to. Have them then step out, again, move back to the position from the side where you started, right? And then literally build for them the ability to look at any of the places and go there. Oh, that's so you can get back. Oh, yeah, so they don't have to be walking around and all this stuff. Literally, as you look over here, you can hit that state of consciousness. Because you see, not only do you want to learn to alter your state of consciousness so that you can go into deeper and deeper trances, you want to become more and more in the waking state. Things clearer, brighter, more focused, more three-dimensional. Being able to see, hear, especially hear things that you couldn't hear before. And learn to be able, because the more alert you are, the more you pick up with stuff with clients. And the fact is that when you're more in the waking state, time will be so much so that the rest of the world will be moving much more in slow motion, which is one of the reasons that you can perceive things. I teach people in the trainer's training to go into this state so that when they teach, they're never in a hurry. They get all the time they need. They can observe everything because they have nothing but time. I like the comment the guy made who interviewed me yesterday. He said, he asked me if I had a blowhole because he said, it's like you never take a breath. Well, I do, but he never heard it because I'm living in a different time zone than he is. That's all. Actually, I'm quite calm and relaxed. It was him that was nervous, especially after I yelled at him. He said he wanted to know who I was, so I told him. This is my good parts, this is my bad part. Which do you want? It's up to you. Okay, now I want you to do this fairly quickly because I'd like to get through some other stuff. So use your hypnosis voice, pacing, intonation, phonetic ambiguities, and deeper and deeper and deeper you go, and then wow, all the way up. But anchor it kinesthetically on the floor and make sure initially from the waking state, 1 and 2 steps backwards, that they go down. Because once you've done this, what you've done is made a really unique sliding anchor. Because you won't run, you can run out of leg, but if you do it this way across the room, it opens up wide possibilities. So don't start with your face against the wall, okay? Right? So spread out, go do it. So what did you find as you moved into more than consciousness? As you moved towards more than your normal waking state? What kinds of things did you notice? Did you manage to anchor it to the floor? Okay, this is yes. And then when you move this way, you went. And then when you move this way, you are. Did the colors get brighter, Mayor?
Yeah.
More depth of field.
Did, what? More depth of field?
Yeah.
How about your hearing?
I'm really aware of the far horizon. I was noticing way far out in the distance. Distance vision.
Wow, you mean there's more than the nose on my face? Guys, look like you're more alive. Got more color in your face and stuff. It's doing some stuff that's in the waking state. It'd be good for you, huh? People will say, how was the workshop? And you go. So I always remember the first time, I read in a book that Leslie Lercan wrote that you could ask people about the last time they were in trance and that, they'd go back in it. And I thought, what a crock. So this next client that came in, I said, have you ever been hypnotized? And this guy said, oh yeah, I used to be hypnotized by my dentist, And I said, well, remember the last time that the dentist did step by step what he did to hypnotize you? And the guy went, well, hypnosis is a strange business. The kind of thing I would use this for is I'd put that line right into my office, right? So I could walk out into a deep trance and walk into the waking state. Because the more, you want to start out really increasing. How about your ability to hear language, words, when you were listening to the other person? Say, how far did you go? This is the one thing I didn't tell you, how far to go forward. It's just, yeah, did you walk another 2 inches? Did you take with you that sense of adventure when you went there? It's a random choice of how I sequence these things, isn't it? Do you ever notice how these exercises never fit together? Think about these 4 days and notice. See, packaging is really important, especially for, I know some of you in here do training. And to me, I know it may not seem like I plan and think about what I do, but I do think about it because I think about where I am and I think about where I want to go. And I found that some of the people that I teach with come in with an outline of all the exercises they're going to do. But they don't think about it in terms of how it fits together with experience. And to me, like with clients, I notice how far I get them, and then I go, what piece do I want to add for an individual or for groups of people? Like, where can I take how far I got further? And sometimes the nice thing about doing that is it builds whole new directions. That, taking people in trance and then literally just thinking to yourself, what happens if we go the other way? Because a lot of times what clients request for themselves isn't enough. I said for years, I've used the adage that it's not that people don't have what they want or that they have something they don't want. It's the other 2 possibilities that really open the door. There's a lot of things that they don't want and they don't have. In fact, they've never even considered as possibilities. That people come in, they go, I don't want to argue with my wife. Well, see, that's something that if you think about it, they have something and they don't want it. And I begin to think, well, what don't they have that they don't want yet? Because part of my job is to make people want things. Because the problem is that, see, you get into conflict in the world of scarcity when people figure, you know, the choice is we're going to fight or not, say, as opposed to going all the way to the opposite end. You know, because I figure if they're not, I start out, well, if you're not fighting, what are they going to do? And I mean, you know, it's like if people go, I don't want to be afraid, I think, well, if they're not afraid, what are they going to do? And I start thinking that it's better for me to decide how outrageous I can make it and how far to what extremes. Because if I shoot them on a highway that's way outside of the scope of their study, I'm going to put them on a road that starts making them have more and more grandiose desires. Because if you try to combat something back to ground zero, it's very difficult than if you try to take it on a whole new direction. That when somebody comes in and says, I don't want to argue with my wife anymore, well, the easiest way to do that is to shoot yourself. Right? Now, again, I use exaggeration because they'll always go, well, that's not what I mean. And I go, well, you have to be careful what you ask for here. Now, using exaggeration at this point as an information gathering tool is one of the things that allows you to begin to find out what kinds of things you can use. Now, if you think out of the wealth of things that we've done here, like all the different kinds of techniques and stuff and the ways in which I've showed you could weave and layer them together, to me, the last piece we have to deal with here is now to take the extremes that we have at the end and to use them for the beginning of a session. Because to me, the beginning of a session is where it's at. It's what you do in the first few seconds, the information you can gather, and your ability to take your own brain and go to extremes, even if you don't take them. Because I start thinking when somebody comes in, like the last couple I saw, these people were fighters, let me tell you. I could hear them fighting almost a block away. And what I love is, because I usually see people in hotels, and I got a room at the embassy suites, and you have to walk down these long corridors. It's on the outside, but it's on the inside. You know, they have hollow hotels now. And I could hear them all the way down the corridor. Of course, not only could I, everybody in the place, because it's inside echo chamber. These two were snitting at each other. I mean, from the moment they must have been ahead of time. Except the elevator, you couldn't hear them. But boy, once they got off the elevator, I was like, right? And then I hear knock, knock, knock on the door, and I open the door, and they're both quiet and smiling. Right. Well, this is what they do, you know. It's why generate the behavior we want to change in the context it would be useful. Let's only do it when we don't need it. Now, the thing is to me, is to capture people and take them not just to the opposite, but way beyond it. Because the further outside the scope of the study you can get, the easier it is to make it doable. See, it's one thing to get them to stop fighting about whatever it is. That's hard work. To get them to never get around to it because they're too busy being involved in passion and lust and flirting with each other, that's simple. Because they don't have to give up fighting, they just won't have time for it. And I find that one of the major things that I think about is keeping my clients occupied with ecstasy. And I know some of you have heard me say it in workshops, that if you can really fill somebody's life with tremendous amount of ecstasy, they don't have time for their problems. Now, it's one thing to hear it as a concept. It's another to think about the intensity of the feelings that we've built here. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to try a little experiment. I want you to mix it up. Find somebody you have not worked with this weekend. I realize that most of you have probably seen each other, but just find somebody you haven't worked with yet this weekend, somebody that you know the least, right? Just to tilt it off a little bit. And then what I want you to do is one of you will be the programmer, one will be the programmee, and I want the programmer to start. Because what I want to do is I want to put all this together. I want you to run through your mind, start out, remember, the most important thing is to put yourself in the right state. You want to be in the maximum uptime, the maximum time state. You want to be able to have that sense of adventure. You want to be able to really put yourself in state, and then that's why I want you to decide who's going to do which first. Now, the other person, what I want you to do is to stop and think of something that you spend time dealing with. I mean, that, you know, one of those things, you know, what do they call them? Issues? I heard somebody in the restaurant today talking about issues, right? You know who you are. And I mean, you know, if you deal with issues, it's because you have the time to do it, right? I mean, if you deal with, you know, issues for yourself, you know, like somebody used the word trust issues. Well, you know, trust becomes an issue unless you're really manipulative. Then trust isn't an issue at all. If your manipulativeness is founded on having positive intentions, manipulating those around you into feeling wonderful and into being happy, you don't worry about trust, because you only have to trust people who can manipulate you. Or unless you're doing business with them, that's a different kind of trust. That's done with contracts in a 44. You know, it's the greatest mover of submodalities, I notice. It's that, or what the Aussies did. Before the workshop that I did in Australia, they gave me a bullwhip. What could they be thinking? You know, they gave me this box, it had a nice ribbon on it and stuff. They went up and they said, we wanted to welcome you to Australia. And I opened this thing, and the first thing I see is a nice Aruba Australian hat. And I put it on, and I looked down underneath it, and there's a bullwhip. And I looked at it, and I said, do you people know who I am? And they went, well, yeah, we heard you were kind of the cowboy of NLP. And I said, well, I don't think that this is what they meant, a cowboy hat. I said, I think they meant something a little different. And then I pulled this thing out, and this one guy said, we're even going to give you lessons about how to use it. And I said, I already know what I'm using it for on you. And suddenly the Red Sea parts, because I began to say, here's a true motivator. This is what they use it for with cows, right? To motivate them. I want everybody in here. What sound does a cow make? And after they all did it, I had them, right? That's the same one I use with people that tell me they're afraid to go into hypnosis because they don't want somebody to make them act like a chicken. I go, what sound does a chicken make? And they go, buck, 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 buck. And I go, see, that's what conscious minds do. Deep trance, you'll be safe. It's conscious minds that make you act like a chicken. Now, this quickness and cleverness of mind is something I want you to start instilling in yourself, because once you go into state, change your time, when you turn around and you ask the person what they still deal with as issues in their life. This is, you know, left over from having too much therapy, you know, that kind of stuff, having dug around in your childhood looking for traumas, having helpful colleagues. There's nothing worse than a group of therapists sitting around a clinic. I mean, they don't sit around and gossip like anybody else does. They all have to dredge through their personal history, you know, deal with their depression. They're the normalization kings and queens of the world, you know. Well, you know, my depression is bad today. I feel fine, but my depression is terrible. Now, what I want you to do now is to start to take things to realize that what you need to do is to swing in your mind with whatever the issue is. What could you add to this person's life that wouldn't give them time for it? Right? What must be missing in their life for them to deal with this stuff? You know, to anybody who stays up all night having meaningful conversations with their girlfriend, right, is not thinking about the right part of their body and using it in the right way. I mean, if you use your mouth to sit up all night and discuss important issues like household chores, right, what should happen is you should learn to turn the sound off and keep making the same movements, but slightly different. Now, it's just a suggestion that when you find yourself engaged in activities, remember the things we went through, that about part of your task is to make the behavior appear stupid, right? To make it unfamiliar to them to do it by juxtaposing it with something that is much more powerful, much more positive. Now you have quick ways of inducing altered states in them and ways of amplifying the pleasurable state to the nth degree, being able to put it in their timeline, into the future, lock it down, to smooth out the past, and to be able to do these things extremely rapidly. The only other piece that I want to add to this is that you all know how to do the belief change. The one thing I want you to do is to start out, and I'll show you, and you'll see how much easier this makes it, by telling them, even though they don't agree with you, to make them believe and do a quick belief change. Because I do this, because you have to understand your clients don't know how easy it is to change a belief. So what I do is I have them pick something they believe very strongly, just watch where their eyes go. And I go, and you really believe this. Now you believe this issue is really important. And they'll go, yeah, of course I do. And I go, well, let's try something just to make sure it really is important. Okay, pick something which is totally unimportant. They go, yeah, and you go, and you notice where their eyes go, and you find out where that picture is. You have them pick the belief, this issue that's real important, and move it to where the unimportant one is, and find out if they still feel it's important. Because if they go, well, it doesn't seem as important, you go, aha, it wasn't a real issue. You guys see the trick in this? Remember, it's part of your job to trick clients into being better. If they think it's a real issue and you pick something that's not a real issue and they can move it into those submodalities and it doesn't seem like a real issue, then it wasn't one. So then you have them then go and build a belief that that's silly to live that way and that they'd rather be involved in lustful ecstasy. And then you take that belief and amplify it out. This is a thing that I want you to really cognitively think about doing. That when you set off with a client, part of your job is to trick them out of their stupidity. To be able to juxtapose it with other things. They don't have to know that you're changing beliefs. See, if they haven't read the book, they don't know that you're tricking them. They don't know that you're just taking a belief and making it into something ludicrous. You're just telling them, well, if you move the picture over here, if it's a real belief, you should still believe it. They'll go, well, yeah. Then you move it over there and you go, still believe it? And they go, no. And they go, well, then it must have been dumb, wasn't it? Now, let's do something. And then you can ask them rhetorical questions, one of the most powerful sets of presuppositions. When you say, wouldn't you rather do something that felt better and was more useful for your life? Yeah, I mean, who's going to go, nah, not me? I mean, you're not going to get that. So you use the rhetorical yes to get them then to engage in a worthwhile activity. And then you pick something like utter and wanton and total lust, which is a better use of time if you engage in that, enjoying flirting, avoiding being coquettious, feeling lustful not just towards the women in their life, but towards money. That'll solve the unemployment problem, right? Desire, because capitalism is a marvelous thing when it comes to motivation. It's like all the Marxists I ever met in college, the quickest way to get somebody to shut up about that stuff? Give them some money. Then that stuff about sharing wealth, the concept doesn't seem, it's one thing to share somebody else's wealth, it's one other thing to share your wealth. Marxism is a real good idea for other people. Now, the thing is that what I want you to do is to think that part of your job is to be a consciousness builder. That what you've got to do is remember, you have to make what seemed important unfamiliar. Steve mentioned something to me which I thought would be a good thing for you guys to try. Have the person think, I love this one. He threw this one out, and I thought, we got to all try this one. This one's a good one, because I tried it in the restaurant. It works really good. Is to pick something that you did which is utterly, absolutely bozo ridiculous. Steve used the example that he remembers that in college, he actually told somebody. He knows he did it, but I mean, when he thinks about it, it is just totally stupid that, that if he was offered a one-way ticket to Venus, he would go there. And he knows at the time he totally meant it, but he cannot even believe that he did it. He knows he did it, but he can't even believe that he did it. Now, that's a good set. Ring a bell, huh? That one lit up on somebody. I mean, think of some of the things that you used to espouse when you were in college. I mean, some of those ardent beliefs. You must have had some doozies, right? That if you thought about saying it now, the only thing you could do would be to blush, right? And if you hear other people say it, you think to yourself, what a bozo, right? We've all done that stuff. Find that and the four tuples and the submodalities of that and put the issue inside there and then pull out from the center of it something more important. Do you want to remember how it works? Put it on the pendulum. Do you want to pay attention to being a bozo, or do you want to pay attention to doubling and quadrupling your sexual prowess and lust in your life? It's up to you. Want this one? Or you want this one? What's it gonna be? Okay, what I want you to do is to do it, and I want you this time to go at top speed, okay? Now is where we start to integrate it. I want you to put the pedal to the metal. I want you to do 10 minutes apiece. Rock and roll. And no talking in between, just jam through it. Okay? This is integration time. Go out there and do it. Make me proud. Now, of course, we all know what time it is now, do we not? It's time to put down your notebooks. It's time to turn the lights down low in your head. Now that you're neurolinguistic programmers, just turn the brightness down. Because what we've been doing here, as you stop and think about the past 4 days, that what I've been doing, in essence, is concentrating on how you organize putting together patterns. That most of the exercises that we did in this workshop, for all practical purposes, I just made up. They aren't the exact things that I do, but they're based on the same principles as everything else you've learned in every other workshop. That the true artistic application of using NLP with an individual or with groups, whether training salesmen or whether selling a car, because to us doing NLP, we all realize there's no difference between what you do working with a client, no matter what that client's profession is or their personal needs or outcome are. What we're doing is getting them to move away from the past and into the future in such a way that they build more and more useful representations. That what they do is they align their conscious and their unconscious resources. And as you begin to scan the various techniques that you've learned here, what you will recognize is that the most important part of them is how they are applied in combinations. That language patterns support all the other techniques, but it isn't the specific technique you use to get somebody to go into the future with pleasure and optimism. It's the way in which you weave and layer them together so that you build full and powerful representations. Representations that will stay with you for the rest of your life. As you listen to the Programming Your Future tape, I hope that one of the things that you were able to gain from it was that that entire tape won't work for everyone, but the general sense of it is to aim people towards a future that's functional, towards one that's more functional than their world would have allowed. It's not just that you break the limits of someone's model of the world, it's that you build a model of the world around it that's so much larger, so much more inclusive, and so much more wantonly pleasurable that there's no way that they could possibly resist it because it's irresistible. And as they look back at that small model of the world, the one with the pain, the one with the discomfort, the one filled with righteousness, seriousness, and stupidity, they don't want to go back there at all because it doesn't seem likely that they would be able to fall into the same traps. And as you assist the people that you work with, both consciously and unconsciously, and aligning their resources in such a way as to be able to find that wanton pleasure, what you will build in them is an ultimate sense of delight and wonder about what's going to come in the future. A hungry sense where instead of avoiding experience, people hunger for it. They want to know what's next, what's new, how can it be better? And as you focus on how much better things are and how much more you can have, you begin to increase the potency, the pleasure, and the desire that you're capable of feeling for all things. With this in mind, I now desire to leave Boulder behind. And as you leave or stay in Boulder and leave the Holiday Inn, take the learnings of this room with you and look into your own future and find out where they're going to be practical, feasible, and applicable, and use them in your own life in that way. and with the lives of those that you work with and touch, not with a sense of unrealistic expectation, but with a sense that you go one step at a time and build more and more for yourself in such a way that you slowly expand the possibilities ad infinitum. With that in mind, I got a plane to catch. It's been fun. Rock and roll!